Have you ever had a moment, maybe late at night when the house is finally quiet, or in the middle of a crowded commute when you suddenly feel completely alone, where you look back at your own life and you don't recognize the person who made all the decisions? It's a chilling, quiet kind of shock. You see the move to that new city, the job you took in a hurry, the relationships you fell into, and you realize with a cold clarity that none of them were destinations. They were escape routes. You weren't running towards something you loved. You were running away from a feeling you couldn't name. It's like waking up in a house you spent your whole life building, only to realize you have no idea why you chose that color for the walls or that view from the window. You were there for every decision, but you weren't really present. You were just moving away from a ghost. And the most terrifying part of that realization is discovering that the ghost was you. You've been haunting your own life, a silent passenger in a vehicle you were supposedly driving. This isn't a sign that you're broken or that you've failed. It's actually the first moment of true seeing. It's the point where you stop looking at the scenery and finally look at the map of your own journey. And here's the strange part, the piece that doesn't make sense until you really sit with it. You were both the runner and the thing you were running from. Think about that. How is that even possible? It's a paradox that holds the key to how our own awareness is structured. You can't outrun yourself because the you that is doing the running is powered by the very same energy as the you that you're trying to leave behind. It's like your right hand trying to run away from your left hand. They are part of the same body. The effort of the chase is proof of the connection. Most of us live our lives based on a misunderstanding of this fundamental rule. We think that if we just change the circumstances, the city, the job, the partner, the haircut, we can finally escape that quiet, persistent hum of discomfort, of not quite rightness. We think the problem is external. We think the solution must be external too. So we pack our bags again and again, but the architecture of reality doesn't work that way. It's not a stage set you can just replace. It's a mirror. And it will patiently, relentlessly show you your own reflection no matter which room you run into. This is why our lives start to feel like a series of echoes. Have you noticed this? You leave a job because you felt unappreciated. And in your new, exciting job, after a few months, that same old feeling of being overlooked starts to creep in at the edges. You end a relationship because you felt trapped, and in the freedom of your new life, you somehow build a different kind of cage for yourself. You move to a vibrant, bustling city to escape the quiet loneliness of your hometown, only to feel more profoundly alone, surrounded by millions of people. The faces change, the buildings are different, but the feeling, that feeling is the same. It's the one piece of luggage you never managed to lose at the airport. It's the constant in every equation. Reality isn't chasing you. It's not punishing you. It's trying to communicate with you in the only language it knows, the language of patterns, of repetition. It's holding up a mirror and saying, hey, look, this thing you keep trying to leave behind, it's part of you. The energy you're spending on running is immense. What if you just stopped? That quiet, nagging feeling you've been running from your whole life isn't an enemy. It's a compass point. It's a part of your own consciousness that has been trying to get your attention, trying to guide you back home to yourself. It sends a signal, a feeling of anxiety, of emptiness, of longing. And our first instinct, the old habit, is to interpret that signal as a threat. We think it's an alarm bell telling us to evacuate the building. So we run. We find a distraction, a new project, a new person, a new place. And for a while, it works. The noise of the newness drowns out the signal. But the signal never truly goes away. It's patient. It waits for the novelty to wear off, for the silence to return. And then you hear it again, faintly at first, then louder. That familiar hum, it's not a monster in the closet. It's a message from your own core, delivered to you through the fabric of reality itself. The world is constantly collaborating with you to show you yourself. The people who trigger you, the situations that frustrate you, the dead ends you keep hitting. They aren't random obstacles. They are perfectly designed feedback. They are signposts pointing back to the place inside you that needs your attention. The realization that you've been running is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of chapter 2. It's the moment the character in the movie stops, panting and exhausted, and slowly turns around to face what's been following them. It's the moment of profound courage, because looking at what we've been running from is the hardest and simplest thing we will ever do. It requires no effort, no journey, no plan. It just requires stillness. It requires the willingness to finally meet the ghost you've been living with your entire life and ask it a simple question. What are you trying to tell me? That moment of turning around is the pivot upon which a whole new reality can be built. A reality where you are no longer a fugitive in your own life, but the architect of it. A reality where your decisions are made not from a place of fear, but from a place of wholeness. This recognition is a gift. It's the universe gently shaking. You awake, not to scold you, but to invite you to a much more interesting way of living. It's the point where you stop being an echo and start being the sound itself. It is the beginning of coming home. By the way, our shared space of light and awareness is on its way to 100,000 people. Thank you to everyone who subscribes and brings this moment closer. And what comes right before you stop? A deep, profound exhaustion. Not the kind of tired you feel after a long day of work, but a soul-level weariness. It's a feeling that you simply cannot take one more step. You've run out of road, run out of excuses, and most importantly, run out of the energy required to keep the whole show going. This exhaustion isn't failure. It's not a sign that you've lost. In the architecture of transformation, this moment is a critical signal. It's the universe's way of saying the fuel for the old pattern has run dry. The engine that was powered by avoidance has finally sputtered to a halt. And in that sudden, deafening silence, a new space is created. It's the space where you can finally hear a different kind of instruction. For so long, your life was about motion, about the next thing. Now, for the first time, it's about stillness. The fatigue is a gift. It forces you to put down the luggage you've been carrying for miles and miles, not because you're strong, but because you're finally too weak to hold it any longer. So, what does stopping actually mean? It doesn't mean your problems magically vanish. It isn't a battle you have to win. It is the simple, quiet, and absolutely terrifying act of turning around to look at what's been behind you this whole time. Instead of opening a social media app when you feel that pang of loneliness, you just sit with it for a minute. You feel its texture, its temperature, without judgment. When that familiar anxiety about the future rises in your chest, instead of immediately calling a friend to distract yourself, you place a hand on your heart and just breathe with it. You let it be there. You stop treating these feelings as enemies to be vanquished and start treating them as messengers who have traveled a very long way to speak with you. And here is the great secret. When you finally turn and face the monster you've been fleeing your entire life, you discover it's not a monster at all. You see that this terrifying shadow was just a small, lost part of yourself. It was your unexpressed grief from a decade ago. It was the fear of not being good enough that you learned as a child. It was your own creative energy that you were told was impractical and silly. You weren't running from a threat. You were running from a part of your own soul that was begging for your attention. The monster was just a crying child in a scary costume, hoping you'd finally come and see what was wrong. And in the moment you stop and look, in the moment you offer it compassion instead of running away, it can finally be integrated. It can finally come home. The shadow dissolves back into the light it came from. Think about the sheer amount of energy this has all taken. Imagine the creative power required to constantly plan your next escape. The mental effort of building new lives, learning new jobs, navigating new social circles, all in the service of outrunning a feeling. The vigilance it took to constantly scan the horizon for that familiar shadow. It's the energy of a full-time, high-stress job you didn't even know you had. Now, what happens when you quit that job? What happens when all of that energy is returned to you? It becomes your resource for building. All the force you put into running away can now be used for creating a life you don't want to run from. This is the fundamental mechanics of personal reality. The energy doesn't disappear. It is simply reallocated. You start using that power not for dramatic escapes, but for small, quiet acts of construction. You use it to say no to an invitation that you know will drain you. You use it to spend an hour on a forgotten hobby instead of scrolling through other people's lives. You use it to have an honest conversation you've been avoiding for years. You start building your home right here inside yourself, brick by brick. You realize you don't need to move to a new city to find peace. You don't need the perfect partner to feel whole. The point of power, the place you were running toward all along, was right here, under your own feet, waiting for you to stop and notice it. The whole journey across the world was just to teach you the value of your own backyard. You stop looking for answers outside of yourself because you finally understood that you are the space where the questions and answers arise. Your life stops being a reaction to fear and starts being an expression of your own core. The coincidences you notice will change. Instead of seeing patterns that confirm your need to escape, you'll start seeing patterns that confirm you're on the right path, that you're supported. Reality will start mirroring your newfound stillness, bringing you people and opportunities that match your wholeness, not your desperation. This is the transformation. It's not loud or glamorous. It's the quiet, solid feeling of standing in your own life, finally present, finally home. You put down the luggage, not because you've arrived at a final destination, but because you've realized the journey was never about going anywhere. It was about learning how to be right here. If this video changed something in you, write in the comments, "I stopped running." Write it as your promise. Nobody